So next week is Mental Health Awareness Week. So to put you in the right frame of mind, we have a really special session this morning to start the day, and hopefully we'll help those people who put their hands up earlier with a hangover, make you feel better and ready and alert for the rest of the day. It is, without further ado, let's welcome to the stage Tia Castagno, who's going to do a fantastic piece all around de-stressing and working out mindfulness in the workplace. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you. Morning, everyone, and thanks for coming, especially as it's the first session, but also because probably you think that this might not be relevant to you. But actually, Jeremy, it's this week that is Mental Health Awareness Week, not next week. So it's very timely. And actually, 2 out of 3 people in this room would have or will be having a mental problem, such as stress. The focus this year of Mental Health Awareness Week is actually on stress. And work is one of the major causes of stress. So you might be thinking, why am I here talking about this? Well, I'm Tia Castagno, and I head up innovation at Vizeum for Denso Aegis, but also trained as a yoga teacher and meditation teacher a while ago, 10 years ago. And I usually run these sessions in my free time, so weekends and evenings, workshops, as well as teaching yoga. So why is it important that we put attention to this is because stress debilitates us and doesn't allow us to perform at our best, not just from a work perspective, but also in our personal relationships and in any sphere of our life. So we want to, perhaps today, we'll stir up some things, not just from a work perspective, whether we are in the right job even, whether we should be in this room, whether we are in the right relationship, to really put attention on those things that we need to pay attention to, which is our brain and the power that our brain can have if we really nurture it. So we want to start from taking a step back, actually. We're going to talk about stress a little bit today, but also we want to talk a little wider and more positively about how we can positively impact the way we think and our mindset. Now, you probably have heard of left and right brain, and there is no such a clear delineation anymore and the scientists have discovered that it's not so clear-cut. But the main point about those 2 hemispheres is that it points out that we have 2 very different functions, one sitting in one hemisphere and the other one sitting in the other. The left brain is known as our logic brain. It's where we do all our thinking on a daily basis. So at the moment you are engaging your left brain, unless you're sleeping, which is possible after last night, but you will be engaging your left brain. Is the thoughts engaged part of the brain, is the one that you use at work when you write an email, when you have a debate with someone, when you have an argument with someone. So it makes connections, it solves problems, and it helps you get through the day, whether it's negotiating something in your job or even negotiating in a shop. And this brain is very useful for everything that we need to go through the day, but it's also got a very negative effect, as it's our sensor. When we say sensor, we mean it's that voice in the back of your mind that tells you that you're not good enough, that tells you that you can't do one thing or the other. It tells you that you can't sing, that you can't play. 70% of leaders, and probably of people in this room, have what's called Impostor Syndrome. They feel that they will be found out one day, and they shouldn't be where they are. And we probably all feel like that sometime or another. And that comes from this sensor that sits in your left brain. And it's extremely difficult to get rid of it unless you start taking on some practices that help you do that. So that might take you a lifetime, but just the simple act of being aware of when that voice comes up and tells you that you're not good enough, that you can't do this and that you can't do that, and labeling for what it is and putting it in the corner will help you have a bigger success rate and be able to achieve your potential. Now, moving on to the more interesting part of the brain, the inventor brain, that we often forget that we have, or that we think that only artists or poets or anyone that works in the creative industries might have. And actually, it's not that way. We're all born with an equally strong right side of the brain. Now, the right side of the brain is what is defined as the inventor. It makes free connections, is the one that is engaged when you are relaxed, when you are totally at ease with yourself, and when you feel most creative. Now, when we are born, only the right side of the brain is working. That's why often people say, oh, find a child in you, because they mean go back to when you were born and only the right side of the brain was working. But then as we educate children, we start teaching them what's right, what's wrong. We start teaching them in binary forms, and the left brain start working more and more. And then we get to a point between 7 and 14, through education, through all the institutions, that the right side of the brain is practically not really engaged or working anymore. We have been fully institutionalized, and unless we make a very strong effort to learn to play an instrument, so in some parts of our day, the right brain might be engaged. So what happens then is that we completely take that functionality out of children, and then as we grow older, we stop engaging the right side of the brain. So what we want to do, and actually that side of the brain is engaged when we are dreaming or when we take drugs. And we're going to go back to that in a minute. But the right brain is what is the master and what should really be driving us as we get through our day, through our work life, through our hobbies, and through everything. And this is also true of our professional world. If you think about it, all the trainings that we tend to do tend to nurture the left side of the brain. People tell us where to sit, how to produce, when to produce an idea, and how to produce an idea. How many of you have been in a brainstorm? Many? Yeah? Now, brainstorms, the concept of brainstorm is actually flawed because you are meant to come up with an idea that should be the realm of your inventor brain, but you are meant to do it in a left brain context. When you are surrounded by people and you're only trying to come up with an idea that is better than the person next to you, your ego kicks in and your ego sits in your logic brain. So you're never going to come up with something that is groundbreaking because you're just sitting there driven by your ego, trying to not even listen to what the other person is saying, but thinking about what you're going to say next that is better. The best ideas always come when you are on your own in a relaxed mode. I can't imagine Albert Einstein brainstorming or any other of the big scientists. They spend a lot of time on their own to then nurture ideas when they are in a group. So going back to drugs, as I mentioned, I will go back to this because it's quite interesting. Now, when we take drugs, like LSD or marijuana, actually, the shift from left to right brain happens immediately. And I'm not advocating the use of drugs, so we'll get to my point in a minute. And that's why people get so addicted to it, because actually, to be in your inventor brain is much more fun than being in a logic frame of mind all the time. So drugs can become very addictive because society at the moment doesn't give us that room to play and explore that you feel when you're taking drugs. Now, going back to what people probably will own up to be doing, like taking alcohol, drinking alcohol has to some degree the same effects as being on drugs, and you probably can relate to when you have been drinking, feeling much more creative and feeling that you are on top of the world and you could do anything you possibly dreamed of when you were a child. Now, we can achieve that without having to take drugs and or drink a lot of alcohol in a much more sustainable way through mindfulness. So if you know anything about mindfulness, you know that actually what it does to your brain, it does exactly the same thing that drugs and alcohol does to you, but in a much more sustainable and long-term way. So it's not just that moment while you're drinking alcohol that you can do that, but it's got much more longevity to it. So lots of people talk about how difficult it is to just sit there and be mindful. That's because, with drugs, of course, you take it and it happens naturally. With mindfulness, you have to sit there and you have to want to do it yourself. So how does it work? Basically, you're trying to interrupt that continuous flow of thinking that really brings you down and keeps you in your logic brain constantly. You can sit in a quiet room and put some very nice music on and try and stop that train of thought, which people find very, very difficult to do. That's why mantras, very simple mantra, like repeating even your name or the word number 1 or 2, really works to take your mind away from thoughts that are in the past or thoughts that are in the future and really put you in the present moment. Now, when we are in our chain of thought, we usually either act from regret, so we think about past situations, and we feel regretful for them, and we live back what has happened to us over and over again, and kick ourselves for not having said that, not having done this, or we live in the fear or expectation of the future. Of course, there's also positive elements that come when we think about the future, but we never live in the present moment. And it's only when you live in the present moment that you can release your brain to feel relaxed and to be in that state of creation. So that's what we aim to do when we are in mindfulness. And if you feel that downloading a mindfulness or meditation app is a bit too much, you don't want to be sitting there, I'll give you an even simpler tip to start practicing meditation. So as I mentioned earlier, the focus of the mind on one object, which could be a mantra or a simple thing that you repeat, is one of the key elements of meditating and being mindful. So any repetitive action that you do, it could be walking, or even clicking your fingers, or repeating a number, a name, a word, whatever you want. So putting your attention onto this one object will take immediately your mind away from thinking, even just for 2, 3, 4 seconds. So repetitive actions that you do every day, like washing the dishes, like ironing, like shaving, like showering, are extremely important to trigger this moment of relaxation if you really focus on it and don't use those moments to do even more thinking. And that's why geniuses are known for saying that they had their best idea while they were in the shower, or while they were shaving, or while they were walking. So those repetitive actions become actually an incredible source of meditation and taking your mind away from that constant thought process that you have. Now, I think we are 15 minutes in, 10 minutes in, so you're probably a bit more prepared to do some testing with this. And I'm not going to ask you to get into any yoga poses or anything like that, although I heard we had a demonstrator that was very keen to get on stage, but maybe we'll save it for a little later. So there are 2 tools that you have at your disposal in your pocket. You don't need to do anything. You don't even need to download an app. You breathe and you have a mind. So being more conscious of your breath immediately puts you in a completely different state of being super relaxed. Now, you probably have heard about shallow breathing and deep breathing. Most of us in this room probably do a lot of shallow breathing and don't even realize. Shallow breathing, and we'll talk about it in a minute, does a very bad thing to your nervous system. It puts you in a situation of constant alertness. So you're always on the edge. And the more you breathe from here, the more your heart rate goes faster. And once you've breathed from this level high up, then it becomes very difficult to learn again to breathe from your belly. But actually, when you feel nervous, or for instance, you have to come on stage and present, or you have a big presentation to your client, or you need to get into a big argument and you feel that tension coming up, just simply breathing all the way down into your belly has a huge physiological impact on your entire body. So we're going to do that. We're going to try that for a few breaths. Just inhaling in and try and send your breath all the way down to your belly. And being very conscious of the breath traveling all the way down and then exhaling out. When you are in the comfort of your room, you can do it also exhaling with your mouth open. Otherwise, in here, as probably most of you will feel very conscious, you just breathe in and out through your nose. And just remembering that you have this tool at your disposal, next time you are getting in a situation that you're getting really worked up for something, 10 breaths before you get into that situation, into that meeting, deep down into your belly. And you can, if you imagine yourself while you're sleeping, or you've seen someone else sleep, you know that their belly rises up and down. Because when we sleep, we are relaxed, and we tend to naturally send the breath into the belly. But we don't do that when we are awake. There should be no difference, really. So that's one exercise that you will have at your disposal during your day practice. Another breathing exercise that I'll teach you now, and I'll see who the brave ones are that will do this, because you need to use your hand, your right hand. So this is to, if we want to activate the right side of the brain, we need to send the breath through the left nostril. So the left nostril is connected to the right brain. The right nostril is connected to the left brain. So if we want to ignite our right brain more, then it means that we need to put focus more on the left nostril going into the right. So the way we do it is we close the right nostril and then place the left the fourth finger on the left nostril and inhaling through the left, then closing the left nostril and exhaling through the right. Then you close the right and inhale through the left again. So we'll do that a few times. So you create this circle of inhaling through the left, sending the breath to the right brain, and exhaling through the right. And as you do that, you send more and more oxygen to the right side of the brain, so that if you need to undertake something creative or simply you want to get in a state that is much more relaxed than you're feeling, you can do that immediately by activating your right brain. A couple more rounds so that you get a bit more familiar with the practice. Feeling a bit conscious? Okay, so we'll go back to this breath in a little later. I won't ask you to do it again, but we'll pick it up again later. Now, that's the breath. And then moving on to meditation and a simple way to meditate. As I was saying earlier, if you are feeling just not ready to download an app or to start like a sitting meditation practice, what you can do is using simple activities that you do every day. Now, walking is one that is very well known for bringing in that feeling of creativeness and relaxation. So if you have a fairly peaceful walk to the tube in the morning, or if you normally take a walk even once a week, just making that much more mindful, you can reap the benefits big time. So the way of doing it is not by walking and then thinking about everything else, as we mentioned earlier, but focusing on the walking. And as you walk, you count the steps as 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So you bring your attention to something that is repetitive, as we mentioned earlier, which immediately triggers relaxation and takes your mind away from thinking. So just using walking, using ironing, using doing the dishes, anything that you do during your day that is repetitive can become a meditation practice. And also makes you feel less annoyed for having to do those repetitive tasks that you do on a daily basis if you can use that as your meditation. Now, one that I teach to children, which is very effective, if you have children that struggle sleeping, this is extremely powerful, and kids really take up to it because it's natural to them to actually be in the right side of the brain. It's called finger breathing. So you can do it sitting there where you are now, and I will ask you to do this one after the demonstration. So what you do is, and do it with your kids and teach it to them if they're struggling sleeping, and they will fall asleep very easily. You simply count on your fingers. You can do this without counting or counting if you need a tool to hang your mind a little more. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4 in your mind, and you can do it slowly or fast, whatever works for you. And of course, if you are meditating, you close your eyes. If it is even you trying to relax before a big meeting, or you're actually trying to get to sleep and you're struggling, you just sit there for 5-10 minutes and just press your fingers with your thumb and go through each of them in circle. I'll let you do that for a bit, and if you close your eyes, you'll see you'll struggle to come back in the room in a few minutes. You can do it as slowly or as fast as you want. And of course, your mind is going to wander at some point away from the count and away from your fingers. And when that happens, you simply acknowledge it and bring it back to it. So in a 20-minute, I've been meditating for 12 years, and in a 20-30-minute meditation in the morning, there will only be moments where I can keep my mind completely still without thoughts. But those moments are the ones that completely regenerate your brain even more than sleep. And that's how people like Gandhi managed to reduce their sleep to 4 hours, because they used to do powerful meditations in which they purposely stopped that train of thought and were able to bring to themselves the same effects that good sleep gives to you. Right, okay, so moving on to the next part. So we talked about the power that we have just through two tools like our breath and the ability to control our mind. Now, talking a bit more about the blocks that we encounter in our daily jobs and how we go about those blocks. I call them toxic blocks because they're very toxic to the body, mind, and emotions. So we touched earlier on stress. Now, what happens to you when stress comes up? Basically, we have two nervous systems, as you're probably aware of through the science that you did. And I'll simplify this a lot because I'm not a scientist myself, and I want to make sure that everyone just understands the principles. We have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is controlled by the left brain and is the one that kicks in normal situations of being very alert. Now, it can be triggered if there is a danger. And back in the days, it used to be when you were chased by a lion. These days, unless you live a very adventurous life, that will probably be one in a lifetime situation where you're chased by a lion. However, in our daily jobs, we often feel constantly that we are being chased by a lion. That could be our boss. That could be just stressful presentations that we have to do, or a client that is really difficult. So we are in a constant state of alertness, as if we were running away from a lion. Now, there are some positive, of course, the sympathetic system is meant to protect us, because when there is a danger, we need to be able to have a higher heart rate, we need to be able to run away. So adrenaline has a very positive impact in many cases. But if you are constantly in that state, which many of us are in our jobs, then it has really detrimental effects on your health. Because it directly impacts your heart to high blood pressure, and through many other physical symptoms that are derived from this sympathetic system being always on. So it can impact your health, your mind, your emotions in ways that are very difficult to rectify. So we want to make sure that we are not in that constant state. And we need to be able to switch our parasympathetic nervous system on more and on demand. So whenever we feel that we are getting in that state of really high stress and feeling that our hands are getting sweaty, that we can hardly breathe, and that our heart rate is going faster, we need to just recognize that we need to kick in our parasympathetic system. And that simply means the triggers that we talked about earlier, the breath. The moment you breathe into your belly, you go against what your sympathetic system does, which makes you breathe up here. So you bring the breath down, and you breathe in through your left nostril to send oxygen to the right brain. And those very simple tools will immediately bring your nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system down, and will let you operate from a state which is much more relaxed, much calmer, and where you can actually be creative and focus on achieving your potential. Basically, put it in other words, if you are in a constant state of alertness, you operate from your logic brain, and you really can't see the big picture. And you can't do any changes that are very big and important in your life. You just go for survival. So we want to really avoid that and try and trigger the parasympathetic system as much as we can. So as I mentioned earlier, this week, the focus of Mental Health Awareness Week is stress, because it is recognized as a really toxic symptom that stops us from achieving our potential. Second one that probably many of us don't really own up to and won't recognize that it's us: jealousy, competition, and the ego. This is another massive toxic block. When we are jealous of someone, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about, because we all feel it. We are brought up in a world where we are meant to compete with each other, and we are meant to be better than one another or than the person next to us. And so we operate from that level of the ego constantly. Now, jealousy comes from fear that if someone is doing better than us, they are going to get what we want, and there is only room for one to succeed. But it's actually not that way. And I think it needs just a shift of the mind to see that if someone is succeeding at what you want to do, that means that it is possible to succeed at that one thing. And there is room for everyone to be successful. Competition with each other puts us in a place where we lose the focus on our purpose and our northern star is, and we focus on the outer world rather than what we want to achieve ourselves. And that has a very negative impact on our mind, because, again, we are always in this left ego brain, never relaxed, and always focusing on someone else rather than us. And this also causes a lot of stress. Self-criticism, we talked about this earlier, the censor. So being able to really put the censor and quieten it down has got a huge impact in being able to take some of this toxicity out of our bodies. Perfectionism is another toxic block that we have in our industry. You know, when people ask you that question, can you in an interview, what is, something that you really don't like about you? Tell me about something negative about you. And you say, I'm a perfectionist, thinking that it's such a great thing, and, you try and disguise it as a negative thing. Well, actually, it is a negative thing, because it means that you take your mind away from the big picture and trying to focus on the detail, again, your logic brain kicking in rather than the big idea brain. Now, this is very important. How many of you are using their phones in the moment? Quite a few. So you have toxicity in your body, really, quite simply. So the relationship we have with technology is one that actually doesn't use technology to the best advantage. Being always on, it means that you don't give yourself the chance to relax and being in the present moment. Whether you are on social media looking at what someone else is doing, and probably triggering some feeling about that and what you are doing instead, or whether you're checking your emails constantly, not giving your mind that chance to relax and just be in the present moment. In our industry, we have that even more than other industries, because we feel that we always have to be on and be responding to emails within a fraction of a second. And actually that impacts our productivity, but also impacts our ability to think about the big picture and take time out and see what really is important. So I really, out of this, if there is one thing that you take out, would be just rethink about your relationship with technology and how much you should be attached to your phone or any other instrument that you use on a daily basis, be it your laptop or iPad. Workaholism is linked to the use of technology. I think workaholism is been made a bigger issue by technology, because now we can be always on, but you're not a hero by working 24/7 for the same reasons that I've been mentioning throughout the session, which is if you don't give yourself time out away from your desk, relaxing, you are not good to anyone. You are just getting by, doing things, many things, but you're not seeing the big picture. You're not focusing on your greatest potential. And you really need that downtime, that relaxation time, away from screens, away from your colleagues, away from your boss, away from people, in order to be able to do that. And finally, you need to get rid of some toxic people around you that are trying to tamper with your success. And that can be in the workplace, that can be relationships, that can be in your family. And it doesn't mean that you have to exclude them completely from your life, but it's simply drawing that circle, deciding what are the things that are important to you, and who are those people that help you achieve those things, and the people that actually work against that. And it's a very, very feel-good exercise to do, to actually pinpoint to who those people are that tell you that you shouldn't be doing one thing that way and that is not the right thing to do, and really take away from you getting to your dream and your potential. Now, moving on to something more positive. So we, to end this session, about growth and fixed mindset. So you probably have heard about growth and fixed mindset. So a fixed mindset, so mindset is the biggest influence on your abilities. It's not the talent that you were born with. It's not how much money you have in the bank. It's none like that. It's your mindset that has the biggest impact and influence on how successful you are and on your potential. Now, a fixed mindset is one that doesn't recognize that you can improve in your life, that feels that you were born with certain talents, and no matter what you do, you will die with those talents, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Instead, a growth mindset is one that believes that the willingness to change trumps talent, so that your dedication to wanting to change the status quo can absolutely trump the talent that you were born with. Now, did you know that singing, so even opera singing, is 95% confidence and 5% talent? You can go and look it up on Google. It's a good start to quote when people tell you that you don't have an ability. Only 5% comes from talent. The rest comes from practice, and belief that you can sing. Wanting to sing, of course. So that belief, that concentration, that focus, that determination, and practice. So if people can learn to sing at the level of opera singers only with 5% talent, can you imagine what you could do? Now, I have a very quick test. So if you're a quick reader, read the first few sentences, the first 3. If your answer to those is agree rather than disagree, it means that perhaps your mindset is stopping you for achieving your potential and for living to the best that you can. If you tend to agree more with the statements from 4 to 7, then it means you are on the right track to have a growth mindset, and you just need to embrace it a little more. It's a great test to just see where you stand with that and work in one direction or the other, because we very much, even if we have a fixed mindset, we can do things to start shifting that towards a growth mindset. So what are the attitudes of a growth mindset? First of all, mentioned earlier, sense of purpose. Know what your purpose is in life. If you are happy in this job, stay in this job. If you're not, find something else that really is aligned with your purpose. Chutzpah, probably some of you will know this Jewish word. It basically, and from many years ago, from the Hamlet, assume a virtue if you have it not. This goes back to this growth mindset and the fact that you can absolutely nurture an ability, even if you think you don't have that talent. Now, this doesn't mean being arrogant and going around, we have also those in our industry that actually, go around bursting with their arrogance, thinking they can do everything, but actually they can't because they haven't been through this growth mindset yet. It's about having a positive mindset and then driving for what you want to achieve. Being playful. So going back to bringing that child in you that allows you to play with the possibilities and gives you courage for doing things. Because you do need to have courage in order to try new things. We talked about bravery, I believe, yesterday a lot. You need to be brave. And if that works, no, stop working. Oh, there you go. Persistence. Of course, you need to be persistent. You can't just imagine to have a talent and hope that will happen. You actually need to work for it. And finally, humility. As I mentioned earlier, it's not about being arrogant. It's about believing that you can. Now, we're going to skip this one and just move to affirmations, just to end this session on a very positive note, which is affirmations. So after you've done your finger meditation in the morning, just look in the mirror and repeat 5, 10 times something that you really want to achieve or you want to believe you have. For instance, I am confident. Or for instance, I am a great public speaker. Just 5, 10 times every morning will trigger the memory in your brain that you actually are a great public speaker, that you actually are confident. So that's how you start impacting your mindset. And I leave you with this task, which is think about what those affirmations are, 1, 3, 5, and start practicing them in front of the mirror every morning and see how you get on in like 30, 40 days. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Tia. Much appreciated.